The primary reason, again, that nutrition and supplementation make a difference, a positive difference when done properly, is that they affect our epigenome. If we could not affect our epigenome and our epigenetics, we could not change our health in the way that we can so dramatically, right? So you see insanely huge changes, positive changes in people's health just from just from not putting bad stuff in your body and putting the base elements that your body needs. If you can just do that, along with like some very, very minimal exercise and stuff like that, you can massively improve your health. If these are things that you don't do on a consistent basis. Like I mentioned, Darwin and Mendel and a lot of these guys had an inkling that there was something missing with the original Darwinism theory, and especially with the neo-Darwinism theory. So this is one of the most important aspects of science. Everybody still, in 2024, the vast majority of people on the planet are taught that you are going to be the way that you are because your genes say you're that way. I mean, it's all over the media, DNA and all this other stuff, like, you know, you messing with DNA programs and changing the DNA structure of things. We are so far away from being able to do that safely with people. But what we do know is that we can change the way that our existing DNA is expressed by altering the environment that the DNA itself is in, right? So if you put the DNA in a good cellular environment inside the nucleus, and you have the proper concentrations of vitamins and minerals and nutrients and chemicals and stuff like that, your genes are going to be expressed in a way that make you healthier, right? And we're gaining the ability, we have the ability right now, and we're gaining the ability every day more and more so to understand this stuff better and better so we can individualize medicine more and more. Now, one of the big unfortunate aspects about this is, you guys, is that none of this stuff is covered by insurance, and that should not be surprising to anybody. Medical insurance is a criminal corporation, right? Medical insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the government, the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, mainstream medical healthcare that relies on all those other corporations for funding, it's all based off of you being sick so they can give you pills for the rest of your life, right? The evidence is obvious. It's right in front of our face. 79.4% of the United States is either obese, overweight, or morbidly obese, right? There's something majorly wrong with our healthcare system. Our life expectancy in the United States is going down for the first time in about a century. People are sicker than ever. It's absolutely horrible. And one of the primary reasons is that the incentives behind our healthcare system are not to make people healthy, they're to keep people sick for life. That's how it works. It's hard for a lot of people to accept this fact, you guys, but it's the fact. Like, this is not my opinion. This is how the system works, right? So accepting it, you can accept this and understand it and then just not deal with the regular mainstream medical system if you have the financial ability to do so, right? So in my opinion, right now, there's two types of medicine in the United States. There's good healthcare, which insurance won't cover, basically aside from surgeries and stuff like that, and you still have to be very careful about who you let operate on you. And then there's mainstream medicine, which is absolute shit, right? So if you have the money to pay for your own healthcare and you know you have this type of background information that I'm providing to you here, you will have the information to go and find good doctors that actually care about you. The only problem is health insurance doesn't cover it, right? So most of this stuff, the vast majority of stuff that I speak about in these classes, you need to pay cash for. It's not overly expensive, but it's not super duper cheap either. But I've been hurt a bunch of times pretty bad in my life, you guys. Being sick and not being in good health is the worst possible thing that you can have happen to you. If you haven't been in that position, I hope you're not, but once you get there, you realize that health is worth just about any amount of money to me personally. So if I understand that there's options to get better health care out there, and I have any way, shape, or form possible to pay for it, if I need to pay cash, I'll find the cash to pay for it. Because if you don't have your health, nothing else in your life is good. DNA is essentially the same in all of an organism's cells, right? We're learning a ton more about this. We know very, very little about DNA and RNA. We don't know what 90% of our DNA does, right? Based on the research that you read, somewhere between 85 and 90% of our DNA is considered junk DNA. The only reason it's considered junk, and the arrogance by somebody to name this junk is just stunning. I'm sure it was somebody that worked for the NIH. Whoever labeled it junk did so because they just didn't know what it does. But what we do know is that if you take the junk DNA out of a human being, they die. So 20,000 genes, more or less, are protein coding genes. We have 3 billion base pairs of DNA nucleotides, right? 3 billion base pairs, right? So we have way, way more than 20,000 genes. That's only about 10% of all of our DNA is those 20,000 genes, right? The other 90%, we have no idea what they do because we don't understand DNA and RNA outside of coding for proteins, right? The general thought throughout history the generalized mainstream thought throughout history, including up until today, is that whatever your DNA says is how you're going to be. That is the mainstream thought of medicine right now in 2024. And that is so wrong. It's not even 50% correct, you guys. That is mostly wrong. The DNA is the underlying sequence that we all have, but how the DNA is expressed depends on how healthy we are or how we develop, like how we have 2 arms. We can't find specific instructions in the DNA for why almost all humans have 2 arms and 2 legs, right? There's no specific instruction that says we shouldn't have 3 arms. It depends on the combination of the different proteins that the DNA and the RNA produce and how they interact with each other, which is how we develop into what we are and how we change, right? It's really, really malleable, which is really, really exciting. And some really interesting researchers are finding out some really cool new stuff, and they have some really great ideas. Some of my favorite researchers on like the specifics of DNA and RNA right now, you guys. Michael Levine's a really interesting guy. Dennis Noble, he's an older fellow. He's awesome. Really, really interesting thoughts. The best podcast for this stuff that I've found so far is Kurt Jaimungal's podcast, The Theories of Everything podcast. It's a really, really good one. The study of epigenetics went from just like most seriously awesome scientific discoveries are bashed and looked down upon whenever anybody first discovers it, because human beings just have the tendency to be afraid of change, whether it's good or not. It's just the instinctual thing that human beings have is, I think, the worst overall human failing is cowardice, right? People are afraid of opposition to ideas, and if they have them, it's just easier for most people to say they're wrong rather than actually using their brain, right? So if you actually think about stuff, you very, very rarely come into this problem. But what people have a problem with is they just want to believe what people tell them because it's easier and it takes less energy and it takes less brain power. So the vast majority of things that people believe in general, and especially in medicine, is because somebody else has told you this. It's not because you have taken the time to go through it yourself. Now, the really, really good medical practitioners out there, they take a step back and they actually think about, what is my goal in the first place? Is it to make people healthier? That I think we can all agree should be one of the major underlying goals of all doctors, if not the major one, right? First, do no harm, make people as healthy as you can. Well, the first do no harm thing, that's obviously been just thrown out the window with what the CDC and the FDA have done over the last 5 years. So they don't care about that at all, obviously. But aside from crazy people like that, you guys, there's a huge amount of options in medicine. The problem is that we've been performing medicine basically the same way in the last 70 years, as our technology and information has exponentially increased. So the thing that people learn in medical schools now is more or less the same as what they were learning 50 to 70 years ago, which is absolutely disgusting. Like the biggest protein in the human body, titin, and I talk about this in the nutrition supplementation class and a little bit in the introduction class, but protein titin is the biggest protein in the human body. It is not something that is taught in medical schools. Even in 2024, I just had a bunch of new graduates that had no idea what the epigenome was or what the titin protein was. It's thought that the titin protein may be the reason that eccentric muscle contraction is stronger than concentric. Just a small little fact that everybody talks about. Why don't we talk about the protein titin, which was discovered in 1992, I think? No, there's no good reason. There's no benign, innocent explanation for not teaching people about the epigenome and proteins and stuff like titin and the way it works nowadays, because we've known about it forever. It's obviously super important. We just decide not to do it, right? So most medical people go through their whole careers assuming they're doing the correct thing without actually taking a step back and thinking, okay, I've been doing this for a while now. 79.4% of the United States population is overweight, obese, or morbidly obese, right? In general, am I doing a good job? Well, the obvious answer is no, right? So most medical practitioners never learn anything else when they get out of school. And they never know anything about any of this stuff because it's not taught in school, right? So this is why it's so exciting and it's so helpful to know this stuff if you want to help your patients as much as you can. And from a business standpoint, you guys, as a doctor of physical therapy, I started my own business, a few years ago, doing super, super well. Probably 30 to 40 of my students have gone out on their own. As far as I know, they're all doing great, right? This is a huge opportunity time in medicine. So the way that medicine is going, and it's just going to continue to get worse and worse in this regard, is that there's going to be good, high quality healthcare using the most advanced medicine that you have to know about yourself and that you have to pay cash for. But if you want to be optimally healthy, that is the option. Being optimally healthy does not happen going to most mainstream medical practices because, number one, you're seeing the doctor for about 2 minutes, right? They've just been put into this system where the insurance companies dictate how doctors treat patients that the people at the insurance companies have no idea how to treat because they're not doctors and they don't care. And then what most medical doctors do, or most medical practitioners, they just accept it and they go along with it for life, and they either don't think about it because it's too painful to think about it, or they just don't have the mental capacity to think about it. Neither one of those answers is acceptable, by the way. They're both bad, but that's just the way it is, right? So there's a huge opportunity for people with this type of information that can optimally help their patients, because no patients are going to get this information from mainstream medicine, and it's one of the simplest, easiest ways that people can help themselves, right? So epigenetics has evolved from like a weird kind of offshoot in medicine to one of the most heavily studied fields in medicine, because this is it's one of the most heavily funded areas of medicine right now because of the potential for success, right? Now again, just keep in mind that anything natural that we find that works really, really well, the pharmaceutical companies are going to tell you that it's dangerous and it's poison, because pharmaceutical companies can't patent natural substances. They have to change it a certain amount to patent it. So they'll tell you it's dangerous. They'll put $100 million or more into research at the same time. And then as soon as they can alter the molecular substance enough to be able to get a patent, and they patent it, then all of a sudden it'll be safe again. But it actually won't be safe because they've changed it enough where it's not natural anymore. And that's when all the side effects get introduced, right? So natural substances are not patentable. In general, they're the safest things that humans can take. They're the most helpful. They have the most widespread benefit. And they're the things that the pharmaceutical companies and the corrupt criminal government corporations like the NIH and the CDC, they're all in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, right? If the pharmaceutical companies can't make money off of it, regardless of whether it's healthy or not, the FDA will blacklist it. That is just the simple fact of the matter. It's the simple truth.